Hey everyone, Kathy the Vegan Prepper here, and I wanted to talk to you today about the only way I've ever truly managed to save a lot of money in a frugal lifestyle. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Vegan Prepper. Vegan Prepper. So if you find yourself looking through tips and tricks for frugality and you go through the list and you find yourself going, check, check, check. I did that before I was poor. Check, check, check. And you just find yourself not really finding advice that actually helps. Like things like, don't get Starbucks as often. What are you talking about? There was one time in my life I quit caffeine. I quit coffee completely. Not just from Starbucks, from the store, so that I could save money. So like, there are some times where I feel like a lot of these lists make assumptions about the way people are spending their money that end up not being helpful to certain people who are really in a bind. Now, granted, I can't offer financial advice for everybody. I'm assuming that you have at least some income to work with. There's always ways that you can possibly cut using like reusable napkins and things like that, like reusables, not using paper towels, but using cloths, using stuff like that, which is something that probably a lot of the frugal people out there have already been doing for a really long time. But for us personally, the only way that we ever actually saw a real difference in our budget and in our money in the month was from two things, and that is buying in bulk and cooking from scratch. And so those two tips are not revelatory. They're not brand new. I did not come up with that myself in all of my wisdom. It was just, practical day-to-day seeing what actually made a difference, because we had already made so many cuts and there were no further cuts to be made. So where could we make some cuts? And basically it was learning about buying in bulk when, this is in the last, several years. I think it was like, 7 or 8 years ago, I bought my first 25-pound bag of oats, and it felt like I was never going to use all of those oats. It was my first bulk purchase. But it is kind of incredible to see the savings over time. There's a little bit of an investment up front, obviously, purchasing a larger quantity than you're used to. But the price per ounce savings just kind of can't be beat. So especially as we're heading into potentially lean times for a lot of people and they need some real advice. That's kind of what I'm trying to make this video about. There is definitely still power in buying in bulk and cooking everything from scratch. Again, this is not like revelatory, but let me talk a little bit about some of the nitty gritty and some of like down to the minutia. And if you guys are interested, I can make a much more detailed video in the future, kind of going over specific scenarios and how to save money in certain areas. So for instance, not buying a prepackaged processed item, say chips, and having popcorn kernels and coconut oil on hand instead. For making popcorn, when you have that salty craving, you're getting fat and salt, and it's not ideal necessarily nutritionally, but I feel like it's still better than like packaged vegan chips. You make it yourself and you can answer that craving and it's still good. So something like that, you can get really strict to the point that you're not buying even like a single thing that's like pre-made. So for instance, my obsession with stocking tomato paste, because I have learned that I can turn 1 can of tomato paste into spaghetti sauce, ketchup, barbecue sauce, tomato sauce, a base for my chilies, for other soups. It can be Mexican, it can be Italian, it can be Indian, it can be almost any cuisine you can think of just by changing up the spices. And so I don't have cans of diced tomatoes or tomato sauce or whatever. So buying in bulk, but also maybe being a little bit more minimalist with the purchases and figuring out those items that can be used for multiple things. So for instance, back to that 25-pound bag of rolled oats, obviously it can make breakfast, but it can make cookies, it can make granola bars, it can make granola, it can be ground up and made into a gluten-free flour, well, if you get gluten-free oats, a flour alternative. It can be turned into oat milk for baking and whatever. Like, you can do so many things with each ingredient. Each ingredient is far more versatile than the packaged items that you buy instead, if that makes sense. I've actually recently begun to experiment with my legumes and grinding my legumes to make flours, which I'm turning into flatbreads. I have also been reading about how you can typically replace anywhere from 20 to 25% of the flour in a bread recipe with a bean flour, so that not only are you increasing the protein and nutrient content of your homemade breads, oh yeah, by the way, cooking breads from scratch, you're also stretching your flour further, because we are definitely going into a period of time where it is likely there's going to be extreme wheat shortages. And so learning how to stretch that flour even further is really important, but it's just making your beans even more versatile. So there's a versatility in ingredients, as I've just been talking about. When you're buying in bulk, you can pare down the number of ingredients you're purchasing while also increasing the number of things that you can make if you do your research and you find out how to make those things into multiple things. So one of the great things that I have on the channel already, and I'm planning on adding more and more and more to that list, is the vegan home cooking playlist. I will link it below. I'm trying to think, like, should I link it or can you guys just find it? I need to see if I can link to the playlist. I'm not 100% sure. I will figure it out and I'll get to it. Just look down below. You'll find it. So the vegan home cooking playlist is already full of a lot of my recipes that I have developed ever since I went vegan. Things like a faux parmesan recipe, my omega-3 pasta sauce recipe, even my sourdough bread method, all kinds of from scratch home cooking that uses, I think, pretty inexpensive ingredients, because that is one of the other great things about being vegan, being plant-based, especially more like whole foods plant-based, is, even though we're not perfect, of course, is that our ingredients are really inexpensive. So that's kind of another thing. A bonus tip, if you're not already vegan, consider making more and more and more of your diet plant-based, and you will actually find a savings. There's kind of this rumor that eating vegan is expensive, and it's not true at all. If you're purchasing fake cheese, if you're purchasing fake meats, then yeah, it's going to be expensive because that stuff is really expensive. But if you're just eating whole plant foods and then changing up the spices to create all, like an entire world of cuisines, then it's not very expensive at all. In fact, that was honestly the biggest jump, like leap forward in our finances that we've had, I think, was when we went vegan. It's so much cheaper to be vegan than it is to not be vegan. And if you need help with cooking from scratch, I would say this book cannot be beat, The Homemade Vegan Pantry. Miyoko Shinner goes through how to do your own, your own vegan mayos, like just so many things, your own vegan butter. So you don't even have to buy the vegan butter in the store. You can make it yourself for like making cookies and stuff for special occasions, things like that. She also has an entire section on cheeses, which are absolutely amazing. And I mean, really like amazing. Actually, she's got, look at this. There's an almond feta, and I have not tried that one yet, but I have made the oil-free melty cheddar, oil-free melty mozzarella, and the oil-free melty pepper jack. She goes through the process of how you sprout quinoa, and then once you've sprouted the quinoa, you turn it into Rejuvelac. You can also use wheat berries, but quinoa is faster. And then you just blend up cashews. And I think like white, when I was doing this, I'm pretty sure white miso was the only thing I had to actually purchase. But now white miso is something that's just always in my fridge because it's like literally the perfect, almost like chicken broth replacement flavor in soups and stuff. But yeah, white miso is fantastic. But that was like the only thing I had to buy. It's very, I wouldn't say it's a whole foods vegan book because it does have oils in it. But like, as far as the faux cheeses, those are the best cheeses I've ever seen. And it's an actual cultured cheese. Oh no, I had to buy agar. So she kind of goes through a lot of that stuff. But still, it was just absolutely fantastic from ingredients that are not overly expensive. And then even like with the agar, you'd make several batches of cheese with that. And so compared to the cost of store-bought vegan cheeses, this is so much cheaper. And so something like this is a fantastic thing if you're missing some of those foods, or like I said, if you're not vegan already, but like we're kind of entering these times when people are having a harder and harder time getting their hands onto animal products. And so if you would like to try to give some faux cheeses a try, like it's delicious, it's cultured. This is the best cheese, like faux cheese I've ever had. And it's because of that culturing. So for me personally, I feel like it's still cheese because it goes through a culturing process. It just didn't start as cow milk, but cow milk is not cheese until it goes through a culturing process. It's the culturing that turns it into cheese. In my opinion, I know somebody will probably argue with me on that, but that's what I feel. Same thing with yogurt, which she goes through how to make yogurts. She goes, anyway, this is just an incredible book for anybody who's looking to make from scratch and learn how to do things for themselves in a vegan or plant-based way for whatever reason, if you're dairy allergic or whatever. Another book, like an honorable mention, that it's a relatively recent find for me, is this one, The New Farm Vegetarian Cookbook. I actually just picked up a used copy. There's a ton of recipes in this book as well from scratch, but also like cheap, like really cheap and really basic stuff. So this is like even more so than that one. This is like, I feel like the ultimate frugal cookbook. There's like really nothing in here that's really like hard to get. There's a huge emphasis on soy in this book. So that's the only thing I would say. Like for me personally, I don't have any issues with soy. I think soy is actually a beautiful miracle health food, especially protective against breast cancer and things like that for women. Some people don't agree, so I'm not here to try to convince anyone. I'm just saying for me personally, we eat soy and I don't have any issues with it. But like if you have an allergy to soy, for instance, this might not be the book for you, even though there's plenty of recipes where it'll not necessarily be 100% focused on just soy, or like one of the ingredients will be soy milk. So then just replace it with oat milk. I think it might still be worth it. Or there's recipes that use soybeans. It's actually the first cookbook I think I've ever seen where they put just cooked soybeans in a recipe. Like I think they have bean burritos that they just cook soybeans, like pinto beans or black beans, and then they put it in the recipe. So you could just replace it like that. It goes through the process of how to make your own tofu, how to make your own tempeh, how to make your own soy milk, how to make like all kinds of stuff in that book too. It's just a fantastic resource. I will link both of them down below so that you can see them. But if you can find used copies on thriftbooks.com, or you know, through a local seller, or if you can find them in your library before you commit to purchasing them, go right ahead. But I think when I got this for like $3. So you can pick up some really cheap used books a lot of times, especially if they're kind of weird, obscure ones like that. Like not a lot of people are looking for. I don't think you're probably going to be able to find a very good used deal on this one because this book is still pretty popular, but you know, maybe you will. But yeah, just looking through my homemade vegan or like vegan home cooking playlist too. Like I said, there's a lot of recipes in there that are very simple and very inexpensive. I'm planning on adding a lot more to that section very soon. The next recipe video, and that is probably going to be my my chili recipe, which is super basic and just like so cheap but so good. And so fast and so easy. So many of my recipes are actually relatively fast and easy too, because I went vegan 3 months before I gave birth to my daughter, and then I nursed her basically round the clock for the first 3 years of her life. And so I was running a business and nursing a child while I was learning how to be vegan. And so many of my recipes are like really fast. But I wanted to say too, like specifically thinking about cooking from scratch, and like figuring out, like I mentioned with the chips, and instead of getting chips, like make popcorn at home. So things might, in order to like if you haven't ever like really gotten into the headspace, and I know probably a lot of you have, and probably a lot of you are like, you don't even need this video, but maybe you'll pick up a tip here and there. And so I'm still glad you're watching. But like to go through, and this is literally what I did, like meal by meal. And then I would notice a place where I wanted to go buy something at the store, or say I did buy something at the store, and then I realized, you know what? I don't think I really need this. What is another option that I could do? So for instance, cereal. like not purchasing prepackaged cereal, what is an alternative for that's cheaper, that can come from my bulk storage? And obviously, for me anyway, the first answer was, well, just granola. You can make granola, and you can make such healthy, ridiculously nutritious granola with your oats and your nuts and your seeds, like as you tolerate them, and just like put together an absolutely delicious granola. If you can't tolerate oats, there are plenty of grain-free granola recipes out there, which I know because I've seen those too, like granolas that are based in pumpkin seeds and things like that, which would definitely be really high in like fat, but also crazy nutritious. So that could be an option. And just kind of going like piece by piece and sort of keep a running list, and not get caught up in feeling like, you know, you failed if you go and, oh, suddenly I bought a package of frozen waffles. It's like, well, yeah, you could make waffles at home, but waffles are they're annoying. So why would you make waffles at home? But like pancake mix, for instance, pancakes would be a great option. She actually has a pancake mix in here, which I based my pancake mix off of, but mine is different from hers, just because of a couple things that I wanted to tweak. And so that book is also full of a lot of mix recipes. And speaking of mixes, I can't believe I forgot to grab this book. This book is like the king of mix recipes. And so this is Marissa A. Link. This book is not specifically vegan, but because of the fact that she herself has dealt with a lot of allergies in her home, pretty much every single one of the recipes has not only a dairy-free option or an egg-free option, but it has gluten-free options. She's got an all-purpose gluten flour mix in the book. There's so many amazing things in here. Learning how to make your own mixes from jars, or to put into jars to kind of have your own instant stuff on the shelf. So she was the original one I got that idea from for making my own mixes, which I put on my shelf. And so that book too, I will link down below. I'd say that book is just like indispensable as far as learning how to do a lot of stuff from scratch, because she also goes into a ton of extreme frugality and making even your own body care recipes. But I don't mean to get into all that. I just mean really, like, because I know that just to say buy in bulk and cook from scratch, like, there's a whole huge learning curve there that I think that not a lot of people really talk about in great detail. So obviously it's one of the most like simple things that you can start doing, but simple does not necessarily always mean easy. So definitely put your questions down in the comments below if you want me to elaborate on any specific thing that you heard me mention briefly, because I did mean for this to be kind of a quick video, but mainly just sort of, like I said, the main thing is to get started for yourself is to keep a running list of things where you realize, I wonder if there's like another option for this, like prepackaged thing I just bought. Can I make this myself? And like, what's an option for that? And then just sort of go list by list, piece by piece. And then you can kind of eliminate that stuff from your budget and focus your budget more into buying the bulk ingredients rather than the prepackaged items. And so a lot of these things too, granted, I do stay home, so I can't imagine what it would be like to be working, you know, like a regular job, and then to have all of this stuff on top of that. Although in a way, I feel like I might be able to imagine just a little bit, because like I mentioned, I was learning how to do specifically the vegan version of all this, and boy, let me tell you, it's way easier to stock as a vegan than as a meat eater, because like I don't even need a freezer for my stuff. But it's like I was learning how to do it while I was running my business, while I was nursing my daughter around the clock. And so, like I said, most of my recipes are super simple and super fast. Because cooking from scratch, cooking from bulk does not necessarily have to be something that takes a huge amount of time every day, especially when you get the tip for making your own mixes. So like, for instance, I just made a cornbread last night and I had like no time, but I have a cornbread mix on my shelf of my recipe, and all I had to do was get the soy milk and get some coconut oil melted, and then that's how I made my cornbread. And it was like so fast to throw it together and then throw it in the oven, and then the time I'm waiting for it to cook, I'm doing other things. And so not everything has to take forever. Cooking from scratch does not necessarily have to be something super laborious. And so I hope to show a lot more of that on the channel as well moving forward. My bonus money saving tip, which is a caveat, like with major caveats attached, is to grow your own food. Now the caveat is, if you already have gardening space and soil and everything all set up, then yeah, you can save a lot of money growing your own food. But again, it's like the same thing like with just buy in bulk, cook from scratch. There's a massive learning curve to learning how to grow your own food. To throw that out there as a frugal tip, I think is kind of irresponsible on like for people who are just starting. There's kind of a major investment to start. And so I would say it sort of depends on where you are. There's definitely possibilities to being able to do it slightly more small scale. In my area, I don't see how that's necessarily very possible, because for me personally, even though I grow really well, I have never been able to successfully grow in small containers. I can only grow in raised beds. It's just too dry and too hot here. Stuff dries out too fast, especially if you have it in, you have your plants in like a ceramic planter. Those will literally get baked by the sun. They will kill your stuff dead, just fry the roots during the day. So it is way too hot here for me to really successfully garden in pots, but it's definitely possible in other areas. You can find a lot of times pots and things like that at Goodwill, or look at Facebook Marketplace. There might be some kind of cheap deals. Or if you have a buy nothing group, check out the Buy Nothing movement. There are Facebook groups all over for certain neighborhoods where you might be able to go and ask for gardening things. So you may be able to start really inexpensively. If your city has a composting program, for instance, where residents are allowed to take certain amounts of soil for free. I have heard that these programs exist, but I don't have that program in my city. Man, that would be amazing. But it is possible your city might do something like that. For us, the primary expense of beginning to grow our own food was investing in the soil. So if you have an opportunity to get free soil, like composted food scraps or whatever from your city, definitely look into that and definitely take advantage of that if you do have that option. We are going to put our plans for how we make our garden beds very inexpensively. At least it used to be. It used to be about $13 per bed. With the cost of wood the way it is now, it's not that cheap anymore, but it's still not like prohibitively expensive to start, I don't believe. If I'm remembering correctly, our beds are about 6 by 3 feet. Or 4. I'm pretty sure it's 3 feet by 6 feet. And then my husband, what he did was to build the sides of the bed, instead of using something like a 2x6, which is what a lot of people do, which are like pretty expensive, he used cedar fence posts, not posts, fence like planks. So they're pretty thin, but our beds have lasted for close to 7 years and they still look beautiful. We haven't had to replace a single one yet. So just the cedar fencing, and then he cut off like the trapezoid end, you know, like the little boom, 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 and like cut it flush, you know, and made the beds that way with just like a little, you know, like a little square post on the sides. And so at some point we can, you know, really get into details on that. But there's just like a tip that you could be using. He did 2 stacked on top of each other, cedar fencing instead of like a 2x6. You don't need wood that thick for your beds. So anyway, ours have lasted very well, like I said, for several years, just that thin fencing. So there's just another tip to get started really cheap with gardening and growing your own food, because like I said, it's not necessarily a frugal tip because of the investment involved, but you can kind of get tips for how to do it cheaper, and hopefully that's helpful for now until we get more detail on the channel. So I don't know, this has just been on my mind a lot lately. This is sort of just at least talk about it briefly. It's for some actual real, like basically, like I said, the only real way we've ever really saved money, because like by the time I was looking at frugal lists to help us through budget, I already was using reusable napkins, reusable cloths in the kitchen, like I had already like quit coffee completely to cut an unnecessary thing out of my life, and just stuff like so yeah, forget Starbucks, forget eating out, we had already made those cuts. And so the only thing that really started making a difference was learning how to buy in bulk, learning how to cook from scratch, And now we do definitely see a nice difference in learning how to grow our own food. Now that we're already established, it costs like no money to keep growing food, except for, you know, the water that we put in. So anyway, I guess that's it for me for now. Hopefully that was helpful at all. If you have any further comments or questions, or specifically, again, anything you would like to hear me talk about in much more detail, please let me know in the comments down below. And we're just praying for you and lifting you up during lean times, and hopefully you will have everything that you need to get you through whatever may come your way. But as always, I hope the rest of your day is good and your life stays wonderful. And I know that that probably seems like a silly thing to say on a prepping channel, especially now. I've mentioned it before, but that is not, it's not a trite thing. I feel like in my heart, I want to be blessing you and like speaking a blessing over you, which I believe does have power, but also there's a message there that kind of no matter what circumstances happen, no matter what circumstances look like, it is possible for our day to be good and for our life to stay wonderful no matter what we're facing, because that's like the joy that comes in up from within. Happiness is in the heart, not in the circumstances. Obviously, I know some circumstances sometimes, you know, it could help. You could be happy if, you know, your circumstances would change a bit. And I'm not saying, you know, that we just sit around and accept every bad thing that happens or whatever. We still work to be better, right? We work to get better. We work to get more financially secure. We work to get into a better place. But, you know, keeping that nice attitude of it's a wonderful, wonderful, blessed life, you know? So anyway, that's it. I hope the rest of your day is good and your life stays wonderful. See you guys in the next one. Bye. Okay, here's like a bonus example, just really fast, of like what we were eating tonight for dinner. So I had made just a really simple pasta dish. It was actually basically the vegan quote unquote hamburger helper dish that I have on the vegan home cooking playlist. But I also made cornbread muffins with my cornbread recipe, which I haven't shared yet, but hopefully it's there by the time you watch this video if you're watching, you know, far in the future. But then I just made a big batch of black beans in the Instant Pot today, which I'm planning on putting away for our recipes for the next 2 days. Basically, we'll just eat black beans for every meal until they are gone. And I will turn them into, you know, soups, whatever. I'll mash them, make black refried beans. But I just decided to throw some of the beans on top of the hamburger helper I made with like pasta. And then this time I used some TVP. And it's just a very simple meal. And then the leftovers, like I said, there wasn't quite enough of the pasta stuff left to feed everybody, and there were only like 4 muffins left. So we just crumble the muffins into the pasta bake to bulk that up a little bit. And then everybody gets some cornbread, and then adding beans on top for just a little extra bulk. And there you go, like super, super cheap, super simple eating. Oh, there's also a whole bunch of cauliflower in here that you kind of can't tell because it's, you know, it blends in. But so in case anybody's like, where's the vegetables? But yeah, buying in bulk, cooking from scratch, creatively utilizing leftovers. Bonus tip. I hadn't thought of that yet. So anyway, there you go. And I'm seriously leaving now. Okay, here I'm going to do a quick walk around of one of the beds. And so you can see it's just this cedar fencing, like I was talking about, with whatever this little size piece of wood is, at these kind of various spots. And so when Adam, like I said, when he was originally building these ended up being roughly $13 per bed. Now I think it is a bit more, but they are still considerably cheaper, even still, than a lot of the designs that I see out there in gardening. And oh, here's one of our lettuces. I didn't pick it fast enough, but I'm letting that one go to seed because it got so big and gorgeous. But anyway, and I'm going to save those seeds and hopefully grow more big, gorgeous lettuce in the fall. But anyway, so yeah, here you can see kind of the basic gist of what it is. It is 6 by 3 feet. So, you know, sort of supportive. So the reason he made these taller at first is because we had a dog at the time who, weirdly enough, would be deterred from getting into the bed with just like a little string across this. And then that was like too much effort, and then she wouldn't get into the beds. So that was why he started doing that. But if you were making it yourself, I don't know that there's any reason you couldn't just make it flush. But in case anybody's wondering why it was sticking up like that. So, all right, there it is. There's the look at the bed. Hopefully that is helpful. And we will definitely get a video on the channel of him building one of these, because we are probably building at least another couple of these pretty soon.